How many Republican congressmen or women did you talk to before you made that statement?
I was reacting to the fact that, and we've talked about it actually.
Yes,
so
ma'am,
far
but
in this.
first, if you could, how many Republican congresswomen or congressmen did you talk to?
You know that moment when somebody walks into a Senate hearing thinking they're the smartest person in the room, and then John Kennedy starts asking questions? Yeah, that's exactly what happened here.
We now turn to Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses today.
Wait, listen.
Professor Sarin, you're a professor at Yale Law School?
I am.
Okay. And I see you've been pretty active on Twitter. I'm looking at one of your tweets from a few months ago, October 30th, 2023. I'd like to read it to you. The House Republican stance is, I kid you not, support for Israel as long as we make it easier for people to cheat on their taxes. End quote. Did you tweet that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. How many Republican congressmen or women did you talk to before you made that statement?
I was reacting to the fact that, and we've talked about it actually.
Yes,
so
ma'am,
far
but
in this.
first, if you could, how many Republican congresswomen or congressmen did you talk to?
I didn't talk to them. I actually was just reacting to the legislation that was proposed.
You didn't talk to any of them?
No, sir.
Before you said that every single one of them supports Israel only if it is made easier for people to cheat on their taxes?
I actually don't think that every single one of them believed
But
that.
that's what you said.
But I do think that the legislation passed by the House reflects a statement of purpose that in order to support Israel, it's important
but I'm looking at what you said.
allow
what your
taxpayers to
students
be able
saw.
to cheat on their taxes.
You said that every single House Republican, none of whom you talked to, would only support Israel if it was made easier for Americans to cheat on their taxes. Now, you said that, and you didn't talk to any of them.
Senator Kennedy,
Didn't you?
I am struck by, and perhaps this is something on which we agree, that it is incredibly important to support Israel. It is also incredibly important to make sure that taxpayers at the top of the distribution
we agree on
pay their
Israel,
fair
but I just
share.
can't believe you would say this about members of Congress. It's pretty pejorative, vicious. Let me finish. Without talking to them. I mean, would it be possible for somebody to support a reduction to the IRS budget because they simply believe the federal government ought to have a balanced budget? Would that be a fair position? Would that be a principled position?
Except that actually doesn't work with respect to defunding
But would it be a
the IRS.
principled position?
It wouldn't be an accurate position because defunding
But you don't
the
know because
IRS
you didn't talk to anybody, did you?
Well,
you just said it.
Defunding the IRS, the CBO agrees, everyone who's testifying today agrees that that is going to add to deficits, not reduce them.
Could it be that a House Republican wanted to reduce the IRS's budget because they think that the IRS is a model of inefficiency and shouldn't be rewarded with more money?
Well,
Could that have been a possibility, a motivation for the way they
Senator
voted?
Kennedy, I so appreciate that question because the reality
Could that have been a motivation for the way they voted?
and it relates very closely to what Senator
Could
King
that
said.
have been a motivation for the way they voted?
That you've seen an inefficient
Could that have
IRS.
been a motivation
If you allow
for the
the
way
witness
they
to
voted?
answer, you might get your answer, Senator
It
Kennedy.
frankly couldn't have been.
It could or couldn't?
It could not have been.
How do you know you didn't talk to them?
Because the reason why you've seen
You
an
just
IRS
made this statement that
hasn't been able.
every Republican in the House supports Israel only if it has been made easier for people to cheat on their taxes. Could it be that maybe a House member thought that, well, the more money we spend, the more deficits we have, and the more deficits we have, the more pressure is put on interest rates, and the higher interest rates go, the more it hurts the poor. Could that have been
Senator
the position
Kennedy,
of one of the House Republicans?
Senator Kennedy,
Could it have been theoretically?
couldn't have been because everyone
it couldn't have been?
It frankly couldn't.
How do you know? You didn't talk to him.
Well, I know that everyone agrees, including witnesses across the aisle, including CBO, including every single tax expert that has contemplated this question, that defunding the IRS makes deficits worse, not better. And so this is a deficit
I just find it,
measure.
Professor, appalling that you would make a statement like this, a vicious statement like this, without talking to a single person about whom you made the statement. And I'm going to remind you, you can only be young once, but you can always be immature. And you ought to think about that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Let me just say that I think that the treatment of witnesses is beginning to degrade a bit here. And I'm going to strike some commentary if it continues down this road. I think personal insults to witnesses are not appropriate, and I will not be tolerant of that in this committee.
Well, could I respond, Mr. Chairman? You're going to
fire away. I think you just called a
you're going to do what you got to do, but I'm going to continue to use my time. You bring witnesses as you're entitled to, and some of them are very good. Some of them have the credibility of Michael Avenatti, and I'm going to use my time when I think it's appropriate to test.
I'm going to use my authority as chairman
to test credibility, witnesses' credibility.
In order
you
to
do
keep
what you
order
got to do, and I'm going to do what I got to do.
Good behavior in
But if
a
that
Senate
is meant
committee.
to bully me, you're talking
No
to
attempt
the
to
wrong
bully
guy.
you.
Okay.
No attempt to bully you, none at all. It's to keep the witness and the committee free of bullying.
I'm entitled to test their credibility, and I think one of our witnesses just got tested.
I hope I passed, Senator. Thank you.
You didn't.
Before we get into this clip, make sure you subscribe because this hearing perfectly captures why so many Americans have completely lost trust in elite institutions. What happened here wasn't just a disagreement over tax policy. This was a direct collision between real-world accountability and the kind of smug political certainty that dominates modern academia. This Yale law professor publicly accused House Republicans of supporting Israel only if Americans were allowed to cheat on their taxes. That's not a small accusation. That's not careful academic language. That's an attack on the character and motives of every Republican involved. In the moment Senator John Kennedy started questioning her, the foundation underneath that argument began collapsing. Kennedy opened with one simple question. Did you talk to any Republicans before making that statement? Her answer, no. Right there, the entire room already understood where this was going. Because once you admit you never spoke to the people you're accusing, your argument suddenly looks a lot less like scholarship and a lot more like partisan activism. And Kennedy knew it. What made this exchange so powerful was how calm and methodical he was. He didn't yell, he didn't grandstand, he didn't need some dramatic speech. He just kept asking basic questions that exposed the weakness of the accusation. Could Republicans have wanted IRS cuts because they believe the federal government spends too much money? Could they believe the IRS is inefficient? Could they believe growing federal agencies create more waste and bureaucracy? Could they believe massive deficits eventually hurt working Americans through inflation and high interest rates? These are completely normal conservative arguments. Millions of Americans believe them. Whether you agree or not, they are clearly legitimate political positions. But the professor couldn't even concede that those motivations might exist. That's the part people watching this clip are reacting to, not disagreement, arrogance. The idea that conservatives cannot possibly hold sincere beliefs. That if Republicans support something, there must automatically be some sinister motive hiding underneath. And honestly, that mindset has infected a huge portion of academia, media, and political commentary in this country. Conservatives aren't treated as people with different solutions anymore. They're treated as morally defective people whose motives are automatically evil. If Republicans want border security, they're accused of hatred. If Republicans want voter ID laws, they're accused of suppressing democracy. If Republicans want spending cuts, they're accused of cruelty. And now apparently if Republicans cut IRS funding, according to this professor, it can only be because they want Americans cheating on taxes. That's not analysis, that's ideology pretending to be intellectualism. Kennedy kept forcing her back to the core issue over and over again. How do you know? How do you know if you never talked to them? and every time he asked it the answer got weaker, because she wasn't operating from evidence about individual lawmakers. She was operating from assumptions about Republicans as a group. That's why this exchange resonated with so many people online. Americans are tired of being lectured by elite institutions that constantly stereotype conservatives while demanding tolerance and nuance for everyone else. And let's be honest, if the roles were reversed, this hearing would have dominated headlines for days. Imagine a conservative professor publicly saying every Democrat only supports a policy because they secretly want criminals to win or because they hate America. The media would call it dangerous rhetoric immediately. But when accusations are aimed at Republicans, suddenly we're told it's just passionate political commentary. People see the double standard. That's one reason trust in universities has cratered over the last decade. A growing number of Americans no longer view elite schools as politically neutral institutions dedicated to truth. They see activist environments where ideological conformity matters more than intellectual honesty, and exchanges like this reinforce that perception. The professor kept trying to retreat into technical debates about IRS funding projections and Congressional Budget Office estimates. But Kennedy refused to let her escape the original accusation. That was the brilliance of his approach. He wasn't debating tax policy anymore. He was debating fairness and basic standards of evidence. You accused an entire political party of bad faith. Did you speak to them? No. Did you know their motivations? No. Did you still publicly attack their character anyway? Yes, that's what this hearing exposed, and honestly it reflects a broader cultural problem. Social media has trained people to believe they can throw out the harshest possible accusations with zero accountability. Online applause becomes more important than accuracy. Outrage becomes more important than understanding. But Senate hearings are different. In a hearing, somebody can actually stop you and say, "Wait a second, prove it." That's exactly what Kennedy did, and once the conversation slowed down and the emotional rhetoric disappeared, the weakness of the argument became obvious. Another reason this clip hit so hard is because Kennedy communicates in a way normal people understand. He doesn't sound like a consultant. He doesn't sound scripted. He sounds like somebody asking straightforward questions that ordinary Americans would ask themselves. That's rare in Washington. A lot of politicians overcomplicate everything. Kennedy does the opposite. He simplifies arguments until the contradictions become impossible to hide. And in this exchange the contradiction was glaring. A Yale professor who probably sees herself as highly analytical and evidence-driven was making sweeping moral claims about people she never even spoke to. That's not careful reasoning. That's prejudice with academic language wrapped around it. The irony is incredible. The senator from Louisiana came across as more thoughtful, more restrained, and more intellectually fair than the Yale law professor. I guarantee that was not the outcome she expected when this hearing started. But this is what happens when ideological certainty collides with direct questioning. Eventually somebody asks for proof. Eventually somebody challenges the assumptions. Eventually somebody refuses to let slogans replace facts. And when that happened here, the confidence started disappearing fast. This clip also reveals why so many conservatives are pushing back harder against elite institutions now. For years, Republicans were told to simply ignore this kind of rhetoric. Stay quiet, don't fight back, don't challenge the experts. That era is over. More conservatives are realizing that if these accusations go unanswered long enough, they become accepted as truth. And once political opponents are no longer seen as merely wrong, but instead portrayed as immoral people acting out of corruption or hatred, productive debate becomes impossible. That's dangerous for the country. You can disagree passionately without demonizing millions of Americans. Kennedy understood that. And whether people agree with his politics or not, this hearing showed exactly why clips like this keep going viral. Americans are starving for public figures willing to confront elite narratives directly instead of backing down the second someone flashes academic credentials. Because at the end of the day, a Yale title doesn't magically make weak arguments stronger. And this hearing proved it. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and comment below.